A chap posted a comment on a Facebook video, one of my Facebook videos recently, which spurned this sort of like short video, if you like. And the comment concerned dogs which chase and the limitations or failings of a singular, purely positive approach in rectifying, modifying or addressing that issue, that chase issue. And what the guy basically said was, you know, that it can be done, but what you need to do is go back to basics, and you need to condition the dog to recall stimuli, those being associated with rewards, and that you start in less distracting areas, very sterile, then go into slightly more distracting, until you start to, you know, work on thresholds and proximities towards the actual prey trigger that causes the chase behaviour in the first place. And then the bottom line was, have you ever tried this? Yes, was my answer, umpteen times over. But here's the thing that I wanted to, and the reason that I'm recording the little video snippet here, is because the thing that I consider to be most relevant in that, and that's something that people say all the time, you know, oh, you just need to go back a bit, you know, you're rushing things too far, you're being lazy by choosing correction or punishment, if you like, for the behaviour that you don't like, rather than spending the time and using your mental capacity and intellect as a superior being to be able to outwit the dog, or to be able to think beyond the dog's sort of like primitive drives, if you like, right? So here's the thing anyway, here's what I said. What the guy said to me was, you wouldn't, if you were teaching a toddler maths, you wouldn't jump straight in and start teaching them, you know, advanced mathematics, but you'd start with 2 + 2, and you'd build up slowly from there, so that the child gained confidence in an understanding of maths, so that you could come to the higher levels that you want to be able to put across. So and use that as an analogy for teaching a dog with positive, you know, time, taking more time, having more patience, and choosing purely positive approaches with a bit of he says negative punishment in there as well, which is basically just the loss of something that the dog considers desirable, but that it can be done by doing this using the child analogy. And here's my answer to that was that, first of all, if you're using a child as an analogy, or a toddler as an analogy, I've said this before, so I won't go into it, but one, we're different species. We share the ability to communicate, not just on a verbal level, but also on a non-verbal level. All right, we're naturally come predisposed to be able to understand and read one another in ways that isn't quite so straightforward with non-human subjects, right? With different animals. The other thing is that a toddler is a blank slate. If I'm going to teach a toddler maths, then a toddler is a blank slate. They have no prior learning, they have no understanding, they have no concept of maths. So I start right at the beginning, and I put in exactly what I want to get out. So the more I put in, the more that as they mature, obviously they can think for themselves and they can start making their own decisions, but I'm putting everything in there from scratch. With behaviour modification, for a dog that is chasing whatever it happens to be, or killing whatever it happens to be, or behaving in a certain way, say that dog is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many years old, that dog has got a history. It has prior learning, and it's working for it because it's doing it again. I think I might have said this somewhere before as well, but it's working for it because it's doing it again. So the dog already has an extensive rehearsal of reinforced behaviour. It enjoys what it does, whether that's on a sort of like you know, a conscious capacity, or whether it's deeper than that, whether it's just a genetic drive within the dog, is neither here nor there at the moment. The fact is, the mere fact that it's repeating itself again and again in certain situations or with certain triggers lends itself to the fact that the dog is getting some form of reward from it. So I'm not starting, for me to then say, okay, here's some kibble, or here's some chicken, or here's some cheese, or here's a ball, or here's a whatever. For a dog that has an extensive history, I can't start at 2 + 2. He's already worked that out, and he's way up into advanced mathematics. And I can't then come back into him and say, okay, forget about everything that you know there. Let's go back to 2 + 2, because the dog doesn't want to. forget about everything that it's learnt there. It enjoys advanced mathematics because it is repeating advanced mathematics again and again. So to suggest that the answer to rectifying that is just to come straight back in and go straight back to basics and try and out-compete or, outdo what the dog has already learned with what I want to teach the dog is, to be honest, wishful thinking, naive, and I don't mean that in anyway a sort of like rude sense towards the person who suggested it, but it implies a distinct lack of experience. I know because I had it, and I know because I thought the same way. That's the reason that I'm saying it. I'm not just pointing fingers. I've been there. I would have said exactly the same thing at one point. But you come to realise when you come to work with enough dogs that it just doesn't work out like that, sadly. So using human analogies for a start is flawed because we aren't the same species, and you act with a human completely different you act with a dog. I don't let my children out for a piddle in the garden in the morning. I don't stick a lead and a collar on them to take them for a walk. They don't eat our bowls on the kitchen floor, and they don't sniff one another's backsides for a pastime. With different animals. And then to suggest that by using basic principles for a dog that has already learned advanced principles, and saying that going back to those basics will counteract those advanced lessons that the dog has learned is incorrect. It's incorrect. You have to show the dog that what it has learned is no longer beneficial for it. Then you can start bringing in, going back and building and building and building. But I have to be able to give an unexpected, a negative consequence to what the dog expected to happen before I can do that. It's the key to the lock, if you like. It opens the door to allow me to then teach. If I fail to do that because of an ethical or a moral or a personal or an organisational bias or preference, because for me, I would like to train in this particular way, then that's fine. You crack on and do that, but you will get to a ceiling. You will get to a ceiling, and you will get to a ceiling where the dog is trustworthy to a point, but there are situations that you cannot outcompete, you cannot work against. And if that's what you want, and if that's where you want to get to, then that's absolutely fine, and it's your prerogative. But please, by taking examples or by judging anything that I'm saying here or criticising anything that I'm saying here, please don't do it by way of taking a raw dog, by way of taking a young dog, or assuming that a dog knows nothing. What we're saying here, what we're talking about, is dogs with extensive rehearsal, dogs that know exactly what they want to do. These aren't dogs that don't understand 2 + 2. They understand it. They've taught themselves repeatedly, and they have a very firm grasp on what they consider to be beneficial in terms of how they view things. Any comments that you've got, any thoughts on that, more than welcome. But I just wanted to put it down there, because if I were to type that in a comments box below a YouTube video, I'd bore myself, so I'd no doubt bore everybody else as well. Thank you.